I want to welcome you to the Ask Jeff YouTube channel. And well, today there is not a question of the day because I am actually on the other side of the world. I am right now on the journeys of Paul. Cannot wait because in the days ahead, I'm actually going to get to lead a trip through the places, the towns, everything that the Apostle Paul got to experience on his respective 3 journeys. So that being said, for these weeks, we have decided to do our most viewed questions. Now, not just the last week or month, but throughout the year. So enjoy some of the great questions that you've submitted throughout time.
Number 9.
It says, per your message on Sunday, Mark chapter 5, verse 2, and Luke chapter 8, verse 27 mention 1 demon-possessed man. However, Matthew chapter 8, verse 28 mentions 2 men. If there were 2 men, could it be the, quote, legion was only in one of the men, and this is why Mark and Luke only mentioned him? Now, this is a multi-layered question, so allow me to kind of back it up a little bit, and then we'll get kind of in the weeds therein. When we look at the gospel accounts, we know that there is one Jesus Christ, there is one life, one ministry, one death, one resurrection. However, we see 4 very differing viewpoints or perspective. Kind of the best analogy I've ever heard is I want you to imagine that there was an automobile accident in the crosshairs of an intersection. And then on all the 4 corners, you had 4 different people who observed the accident. Based on who they were would determine what they might share. For example, a medical doctor or a nurse might talk about the injuries that were sustained. Whom we know as Luke was the beloved physician. What we know as Mark, or who we know as Mark, most likely a younger man, the gospel of action as referenced here, he might talk about the impact, the force, etc. Why is this important? Because in Matthew was a tax collector. He was into the details. He was into the minutia therein, and he has this wonderful habit of telling us the number of people, but not necessarily their names. For example, when Bartimaeus was healed on the road to Jerusalem, Matthew talks about that there were multiple people on the road, but Mark only tells us the name of Bartimaeus. Here in the Gospel of Mark chapter 5, we see this demon-possessed man. However, in Matthew, it mentions several of them. The thing that I love about the Gospel of Mark is that even though it's a gospel of fast pace, he tends to focus in on a story. He focuses in on one person, whereas Matthew, the accountant, is basically saying, man, there were 2 guys that were delivered. There were 2 guys that were healed. Now, let's go back to that automobile analogy. You had an automobile accident involving 2 cars, and both had multiple person families in them. Matthew is going to say something to the effect of there were 7 people involved in the accident, and 2 of them had to go to the hospital. Mark might make this statement, man, you're not going to believe it. This one guy, his arm got cut off, but they sewed it back together in the ER. And that would be his perspective. Again, even though they use what appear to be differences, they don't contradict each other. The problem would be is if Matthew said there were 2 and only one this, or if they say 1 and only. In other words, the descriptions are not canceling out the others. They're actually giving us a more commentary of the scenario. Great question. If you have one, send it to AskJeff.net. Maybe your question will be tomorrow. Thanks for being a part of today's daily question. Now, we answer a question each and every day. Please feel free to submit a new question at AskJeff.net. We may not have gotten to yours today, but we eventually will continue to be a part of this. Subscribe so you don't miss out on a question every day.